It was two people in kind of a little circular meadow with really bright sunlight, and one of them was a beautiful, sparkly boy, and one was just a girl who was human and normal, and they were having this conversation. The boy was a vampire, and he was trying to explain to her how much he cared about her, and yet, at the same time, how much he wanted to kill her. This was former stay-at-home mom turned best-selling author Stephenie Meyer, talking about the dream that would inspire her 2005 debut novel, the YA vampire romance, Twilight. In the wake of the book's success, Meyer would further claim that, despite being an avid reader, she never really had much experience with other vampire stories, due to a lifelong aversion to R-rated films and the horror genre. Many found this claim hard to believe, but whether it was true or not, there was no denying Meyer herself was about to have a gigantic impact on the future of vampire stories. Twilight and its sequels, not to mention the gigantic film franchise adaptation, became a genuine worldwide phenomenon. The books certainly had their detractors, including Interview with the Vampire author Anne Rice, who labeled it vampires dumbed down for kids, and criticized the premise of immortal beings wanting to attend high school as a failure of imagination. And Stephen King, who was even harsher when he publicly stated that Meyer can't write worth a darn, she's not very good. But while Rice and King were joined by many other harsh critics who took issue with the franchise's success, this hardly mattered to its legions of fans, who either defended Meyer's tale and argued its critics weren't acknowledging the potent pull it had on its intended target audience, or simply allowed the criticism to roll right off them. And why shouldn't they? In a sense, they had already won. Twilight was inarguably a landscape-changing pop culture event, and, like the sparkliness of it or not, it made the vampire genre arguably hotter than ever. Book series that had predated Twilight, such as Charlene Harris's Sookie Stackhouse novels, or L.J. Smith's The Vampire Diaries, were able to capitalize and enjoy a giant second life, both being rushed to television in the wake of the Twilight movie's success. Likewise, both the YA bookshelves and movie theaters were soon full of new novels and films clearly attempting to become the next Twilight. Not all featured vampires or werewolves, but it was still usually easy to see the Twilight-inspired trappings in YA novels or series-turned movies, such as The Hunger Games, The Mortal Instruments, and Beastly. Heck, even Leonardo DiCaprio got in on the action, producing an obviously Twilight-inspired update of the classic fairy tale Red Riding Hood, which even managed to snag Catherine Hardwicke, director of the first Twilight movie. Yes, to the dismay of Twilight's critics and the joy of Twilight fans eager to consume more similar material, it seemed for a time you couldn't escape either Meyer's series or the numerous imitators it spawned. Even the erotic publishing sensation turned controversial movie series 50 Shades of Grey was originally loosely based on Twilight fanfiction. So whether her claims of not being familiar with vampires before deciding to write her own vampire story are true, and no matter what anyone may say about her skills as a writer, one has to give it up for Stephenie Meyer as easily one of the most influential authors of the modern era, one whose impact on the vampire genre and the popularity of YA lit and its cinematic adaptations is still being felt today. Because there are those in Hollywood who could arguably be considered even bigger bloodsuckers than vampires, and will probably never get away from producers and studio execs alike eagerly chasing the next Twilight. The year is 2014, and the Weinstein Company is ready to launch the next big romantic vampire action YA franchise and next Twilight with Vampire Academy.
10, Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And where there are Moroi, there is Strigoi, and there's your boy, Chris.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Well, here we are back, Chris, for the end of one of our themes. I know it's always a sad time, but it's been a fun month. It's been a good month, the month of love, as we keep stating. So this is our third and final installment of Will You Be My VAMPentine. Kicked it off with the cinematic classic Vampirella. In our last episode, we did a little success to series with Underworld. And today, we're going to be looking at a movie that, oddly enough, has more gratuitous cleavage than Vampirella, which I thought was interesting. And that is 2014's Vampire Academy. And this is not only is this, our third, kind of vampire-themed episode of the month, but this is a return for us to one of our, I don't know, do I want to say favorite genres or dreaded genres? The YA adaptation.
Yes. It could go either way with YA.
Yeah. We've done some of these before, and we're always wading into dangerous and tricky territory. So we decided this time we weren't going to go it alone for the first time ever, right? We're gonna bring in an additional voice to help guide us through Vampire Academy. So do we want to introduce the guests right now?
Sure, yeah, please. Jackie, are you there?
Hi, boys.
Oh, this is my friend Jackie Charniga, who is joining us today for a couple reasons. On one hand, here we are looking at another YA series, and let's just call it the elephant in the room. These movies aren't necessarily made for us. We're not necessarily the target audience in terms of if you're talking about the quadrants Hollywood aims for. Two cis white men talking about Vampire Academy. Maybe there's another perspective that could be heard. But even beyond that, the great thing is Jackie also has a lot more experience with this as the source material.
Right.
So every time we've done one of these YA things, we've been pretty much going in cold. We haven't read these books. We don't know much about them. And we thought it might be fun to finally talk to someone who's actually more familiar with the source material. And so we can give our thoughts as just total newbies to the material coming in. Yep. But Jackie can talk to us as how this works as an adaptation. Yep. And we'll talk to you in a little bit about that, Jackie. But first, Chris, do you want to just give us a little basics about this movie?
Of course. It is directed by Mark Waters. He directed Freaky Friday, Mean Girls, The Spiderwick Chronicles, Ghosts of Girlfriends Past, a classic of Trev's. Written by his brother, Daniel Waters, most famous for writing Heathers, Batman Returns, and Demolition Man, a favorite of both of ours. This is based off the 6-book series by Rochelle Mead, published from 2007 to 2010. The film had a budget of $30 million. Domestically, it made $7.8 million. And worldwide, Trev and Jackie, this made $15.6 million, which is less than half the budget, and which means it should have doubled the budget. So this was kind of a, I don't want to say colossal financial failure, but no shit, we didn't get another one. Pretty plain and simple. So now we've gotten this out of the way. Jackie, please tell us all about yourself. Explain to the listeners why you're here and, Keep it going. Why you're here? Why are you here? Who let you in this room? Anyway.
So, yes, I will confirm I am a friend and former coworker of Trev's. I'm an expert witness and Vampire Academy scholar. So before I launch into my story, I just want to acknowledge that this is a judgment-free zone. I'm going to be divulging some information about being a Twilight tween, and you, men, purveyors of the culture, though you may be, will simply have to listen. So, I am.
That's why we're letting you speak now. Is that the deal? Is that okay?
It is very kind, and I will use my time wisely. So I am, full disclosure, 28, meaning I'm about 30 years younger than Trev. And
Oh, man.
The joke has persevered through culture and time.
Yes. So as stated about the quadrants, I was ripe for the picking. I was exactly in this quarter of the audience they were targeting. I was someone who read a lot in middle school. I didn't exactly need a book like Twilight to get me interested in reading, but it obviously came at exactly the right time. So the first time I got a copy of it, I was 12. At the time, I was sort of reading Madeleine L'Engle books, which is sort of like the Vicky Austen series, and The Wrinkle in Time. I was reading Jacqueline Moriarty, a Australian writer who's the sister of Leanne Moriarty, whom you might know as the author of Big Little Lies. So I was a reader around the time that Twilight was published, but when a classmate gave it to me in 7th grade, which is about 2 years after it came out, I was very into it. I definitely read Twilight first of the sort of vampire books that obviously came out in a rush after this. I caught up with Twilight before they had finished, so I was like camping with a friend who knew of my Twilight obsession, which she shared. And she gave me Vampire Academy and basically said, if you like Twilight, you're going to like this.
Cool.
I also, thinking about this in the past week, I remembered the fact that I have a pair of Chuck Taylors that we had decorated together Twilight themed. Again, judgment-free zone. But like one foot was like Edward, and I had like put clear glittery nail polish on it.
Do you have photos of these?
I do not, and I will not send it for your Instagram.
Wait, was the other foot, so the one foot was Edward, was the other foot Jacob, or was the other foot Bella?
The other foot was Jacob, and I drew little wolves on it with Sharpie. They are not accurate. They look sort of like fat dogs, and they're in my childhood closet, and that is where they are entombed forever. But anyways, so
Great.
My friend gave me Vampire Academy, and I liked it. I mean, I can't really rank the genred vampire books in that sense because they're all very, very similar. And so I liked Twilight. Other people started to like it when it became popular, and there was the television, film deals, all these things in the works. I kind of got resentful. Mm-hmm. It was very much I'm a pouty tween who liked this thing first, and you're all copying me.
Hipster mentality.
And then, you know, when the film came out and everything, there was this tectonic shift, and then it was suddenly very, very bad to like Twilight or be a teenage faux goth girl at all. And so it was just sort of something that endured, but I stopped talking about. But Vampire Academy, I read all of the books multiple times. I was very invested in the universe. I loved the protagonist, Rose Hathaway. I was really into the series. So I saw this film in theaters. I contributed to the 15 million gross, personally.
Great. You should get
you said this was...
producerial credit on that one.
well, we'll talk about that later. Maybe you could have on the next one. You said that this was the first like vampire series you read after Twilight. Mm-hmm. This is the next one you did?
I think so. I mean, there were others sort of littered about, but this one really stood out to me, and it was the one that I repeated over the years.
That's what I wanted to ask real quick. So you've, besides Twilight and Vampire Academy, you've read other like vampire YA series that are kind of in the same like, you know, wheelhouse, you'd say?
Yes, and I don't think I read Vampire Diaries. I think that one was just, I think I was sort of vampired out by the time I acknowledged that book series.
Sure.
And
Mm-hmm.
the show was very popular, and I watched the show much later into its run, just to sort of check it out of curiosity.
I guess what I'm curious about, if you can like, and we don't have to go too deep into this right now, because we can, you know, talk about this in the review itself as well. But can you quickly think, do you have a theory as to, because you said you were like the right age for this, you were like the target audience for Twilight and this. If you had to like sum up what it is about like these vampire romance books and movies that so captured like that generation, because you know people often talk about like Twilight as the beginning of it, but then I was thinking that's not necessarily true. I mean, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a show we all love. I know, Jackie, you're a fan just like Chris and I are, but that was already doing, you know, the girl who's, you know, in love with the vampire and things like that even before Twilight. But what do you think it is? Like, why do you think young women fall for this vampire thing so much? Do you have a theory?
I can't speak too much to that insight, but in terms of my relationship to Vampire Academy, I have a friend who talks about comic books all the time as being something that's like pretty terrible or not really interesting to her, but she saw the Joker movie and loved it. And her big takeaway was that it didn't even have to be the Joker. It could have just been a story of a man's psychotic break. And
that's the reason I didn't like the Joker.
I was about to say, Trev is having his psychotic break right now as you tell him this.
Yes, and with Vampire Academy, what I thought was interesting about it is that there was the strength of the characters and the situations, that sort of the particulars, as it were, the vampirism, the magic, which we'll go into later.
Yep.
It was almost secondary, that these were just sort of like the world building in and of itself was so familiar that it almost wasn't as valuable as the characters and their dynamics itself. And then when they were explored later in the books, it was a lot more philosophical and intellectualized than simply this is a magical world and this is just sort of the repercussions of that. And I think that's what attracted me to it, that the vampire element was almost, something it was embarrassed of a little bit.
Like window dressing almost? Like...
Yeah, that it created certain situations and developed relationships, but it in and of itself was not the interesting component of the story. But I think in vampire lore or ideas, it's just the supernatural element, and there is a sexiness, there is an alluring element to it, there is the bodily fluids of it all, that this is something that is very taboo, but is spoken of in such a... it's almost like a separation where you're not directly ingesting the content, but you're sort of flirting with the idea of using it as an analog for other things that teenage girls may or may not think about.
Yeah, and
Does
we'll
that
talk about
answer the question?
We'll talk about that in the movie as well. Obviously, you can see, like, and I'm guessing we'll talk about this in terms of its strengths as an adaptation, but there's some themes that are quite evident that they're aiming for.
It's interesting, too, that you're saying that, because me and Trev have recently actually had a discussion privately about the Harry Potter series. And I think that's an apt thing to talk about, too, off the bat, because this kind of takes, Twilight and Harry Potter and puts them together. Now... What I'm getting from you is this book series, like I said, or like you said, sorry, takes the vampirism element and makes it more of like a metaphor, or it's more like, I mean, it's obviously happening, of course, but it's more about these interpersonal relationships among high school girls and what they go through, versus when Harry Potter just gets wrapped up in its mythology, to the point that you kind of forget they're even at school anymore. You know what I mean? Me and Trev were discussing why is it that Harry Potter, and this is a huge, gigantic, loaded question, but I want your perspective on this. Why is it that Harry Potter has taken the world by storm? J.K. Rowling out the conversation at this point in 2023, but why does something like Harry Potter click, and something like Vampire Academy, when it's starting, when vampires are hot? When vampires are the top of the entertainment tower, why does this not hit as much?
Yeah, I think what Vampire Academy is trying to do is also, like you mentioned, embody some of Harry Potter's trends of like this dark academia thing that sort of sprung out of it, where there's something about this exclusive group of young people who are in this special set of circumstances. They have special abilities, and they're facing all of these internal conflicts and external threats. That is something that is sort of adding a drama to puberty that just doesn't exist in real life. So I think that when everyone is sort of casting themselves as the protagonist, there's obviously been various Tumblr blogs where people insert themselves into Harry Potter, but it's just this essential desire as a teen to be acknowledged and understand that your experience is extraordinary and the stakes are real and there is a vibrancy to your conflicts. And it's very interesting because obviously these books are aimed at teens, but they're all written by adults. So there's also this allure as well from the adult perspective as why are they going back to this idea? Why are they so interested in the pubescent and mixing it with the supernatural? And I think that the people who are sort of raised on it are continuing that marketing and pulling towards, progeniting this trend for future generations.
It's funny because I've always thought of that as like an issue with the genre as well, right? Because the jokey version of this that I always like to draw attention to is a show I love, Saved by the Bell, which is a high school show written by, like, at that time, 50 to 60-year-old comedy writers who have the kids, like, teenagers in, like, the early 90s making, like, Spiro Agnew jokes. And it's like, what? And it's just, like, they're doing all the humor from, like, when they were younger. And you mentioned that all these YA, like, teen books are written by adults. And that's always struck me in the few I've read, that the teenagers never sound like real teenagers because it's not teens writing these, For a peek behind the curtain, though, because Chris mentioned that we were having this conversation about Harry Potter, and I wanted to give some more context on that, because I actually think it feeds into this discussion. So where this came from was I was asking Chris, whether it was being flippant or not, I was kind of making my case, and it's a case I've been making for a long time, to say that it's interesting to me that Harry Potter was the property that took off and became the pop culture phenomenon it did, because I believe that it's ultimately, I don't think it's that much different and that much better written than a lot of other, young reader, middle grade book series. And I think I've always been of the belief that another book series could have been Harry Potter if given the same kind of push and promotional attention at the same time. I just feel like it hit at just the right time. I'm not even taking anything away from the books, and I'm not saying this is a negative thing. I'm making the point that these things are like always cyclical. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, when I look at Harry Potter, where I see people talking about its originality and everything, and I feel like there's been whole comedy routines about how similar Harry Potter is on a structural level to Star Wars. The orphan who's sent to live with his aunt and uncle, who want to keep him away from this like magical world, and all, the old grizzled mentor that he ends up finding. And it's like, it's the hero's journey. These things always kind of come and go. And you definitely see that in this YA, world. Jackie and I, she mentioned we were co-workers in the past. We worked together at Barnes & Noble, a bookstore. And we've seen all these YA series come and go, and these trends, and they're always feeding off of each other. And to me, it's pretty clear when you look at Vampire Academy that it's a book series that does follow in the wake of Harry Potter and Twilight, and even a little bit of Hunger Games, right? It's trying to like throw it all in and mix it together. Is that kind of a fair assessment, Jackie?
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think for me, the big distinction between us is that I read Harry Potter as a child, and you read it as an adult, correct?
Yeah.
So what attracted me to it as a kid wasn't just the world building and the ideas and the threats, but also that these were kids and they were mean to each other. Mm-hmm. They spoke authentically. They made fun of each other's appearances. They had secrets from each other. That there was this sort of textured reality to the children characters that I really related to as a kid myself, who sometimes said inappropriate things and was mean every once in a while and wanted to think better of myself. And I think, yes, there is certainly an attraction in encasing these very real dramas in hyper reality and hyper intense mystical elements where it's almost as if your emotions were strong enough that you'd be able to see them and have spells and do wild things. But I think the magic conversation and the vampire conversation aren't always put in the same conversation as we are obviously doing with Vampire Academy.
So I think that's a great place to actually tell a little bit more details of the book series itself. As I mentioned before, there were 6 books in the series. The first one, Vampire Academy, followed by Frostbite, Shadow Kiss, Blood Promise, Spirit Bound, and Last Sacrifice. This series tells the story of Rosemary, Rose Hathaway, a Dampier girl who is training to be a guardian of her Moroi best friend, Vasilissa Lissa Dragomir. The Dampier are a good vampire, half human breed that train as guardians, like protectors of the Moroi, as I said. And the Moroi are like the really good vampires. They're the ones that kind of have like royalty or royal blood kind of thing. In the process of learning how to defeat the Strigoi, which is the bad vampires, they just always are wanting to kill. And they're a threat to humanity and the vampire breeds, everybody all encompassing. This all takes place at the St. Vladimir's Academy. Rose actually finds herself caught in a forbidden romance with her instructor, Dmitry Belikov, who is a fellow Dampier, again, a guardian of the Moroi, and she has an unbreakable psychic bond with her best friend, Lissa. I should mention that Lissa is like I think she's the heir to the throne of the vampires, or whatever. Like, she's like in line to be queen at this point. So she's Princess Lissa Dragomir, and again, they're best friends, and she wants to protect her throughout their lives. Jackie, how'd I do? How'd I do?
I think you did as best as you can.
Thank you.
Yes, it's all about these 3 breeds of vampires and these 2 girls really at the heart of the entire universe that exists here. And Rose is in a somewhat subservient role to her best friend because her goal in life through the trajectory through all of the books is to become Lissa's guardian, to protect her and work for her indefinitely.
Right.
Jackie, can I just quickly ask before we move on, really quickly, as someone who read all 6 books, and if anyone is listening to this episode and ends up feeling like maybe they want to give it a whirl, do you feel that the series remained entertaining all the way through, and do you feel like the 6th book was a satisfactory conclusion? Because I know that's always a crapshoot with these YA series. Some people, people love the last Harry Potter, Hunger Games. The end was like a little bit more divisive. Same with Twilight. What do you think about Vampire Academy? Without spoiling it, were you satisfied with the ending when you got to it?
I was definitely satisfied with the ending when I got to it. I don't think it should have lasted for all those books. There was definitely one book that should have just been consolidated into the one that came before it. And I think when that happened, you can really sort of feel the narrative stretching to just make it last for what was obviously a contract. But yeah, definitely felt like they could have just... How many are there, Chris? I mean,
6.
they're all... 6, okay.
And you were supposed to be the expert. Unbelievable.
I read them all, but, 6 is a lot. I'm still shocked that there are 6, because it definitely feels like there's content enough for 4. Riveting content, but, maybe not 6.
Yeah, I feel you. That makes sense. It's kind of like where we are with the MCU right now, right? There's 50 properties, and, well, half of them are good. So moving back to the film itself, 2014 was, a different time. Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 had just been released 2 years prior. HBO's True Blood was about to run in its 7th and final season. And then The Vampire Diaries was in its 5th. So the vampire craze was, quite high when this was coming out. Also, again, because of the massive success of Harry Potter... YA movies, man. Trev, we've done a few of these already. But the YA genre keeps trying. And just to name a bunch, and some of them that we've actually done already in this podcast, but we got, The Golden Compass, Cirque du Freak, The Vampire's Assistant, I Am Number 4, Beautiful Creatures, The Mortal Instrument, City of Bones, The Giver, The Fifth Wave, The Darkest Minds, Mortal Engines, and there's more to come. Okay, for our podcast and YA is kind of slowed down, I think, theatrically, which I think we'll get to later on. But Vampire Academy was kind of hitting. Would you say, while the iron is hot, Trev? Am I wrong by saying that, or what do you think?
I mean, book-wise, for sure, and I think Jackie can speak to this too. I feel like those Vampire Academy books. I mean, I feel like an old war veteran, man. I lived through it all. I was there when Twilight was. I was doing the midnight releases of Twilight books at Borders, actually, and then the whole Harry Potter, the last few books, and that feeding into all Vampire Academy, Mortal Engines, seeing it all. Vampire Academy definitely felt like. To me, it's hard for me to... I don't have any specific sale numbers in front of me. But if you ask me, hey, what's the other big YA vampire series that was around at the same time as Twilight? This is definitely the one I would point to. I just always remember the covers of these. I remember them just seeming omnipresent on the shelves. So It doesn't surprise me that it was the next one Jackie jumped to, because it definitely seemed like... It felt to me like it was designed to be you finished Twilight, now read these.
Right. Well, this development of the film started in 2010, so really right as the series wrapped up. Prager Entertainment gets a hold of this, and
I'm surprised it took that long, actually, because what we've noticed is with these YA things, usually it seems like you were just mentioning how many times they've tried this. I feel like every new YA series just is instantly optioned to be a movie, even before the first book comes out. It's interesting that this one they were kind of waiting and seeing. That's
a good point. Well, they get in league with Don Murphy. Perhaps maybe I don't want to say Chris Fave, but somebody that you might make fun of me for. The producer of the Transformers franchise. Okay.
He also produced Splice and Natural Born Killer, so I'll give him some credit.
Okay, fair enough. Well, they are in charge of putting this movie together. Originally, it was called Vampire Academy. Then they changed it to Vampire Academy Blood Sisters, which was the name of the first book in foreign languages. But then ultimately, they go back and call it Vampire Academy, and it's greenlit in April of 2013, coming out 1 year later, and scheduled for Valentine's Day, which is great because we're talking about it in the month of love. The Weinstein Company was the distributor for the... hold on. I have a thing to say. They're the distributor of the film, Trev, and they actually held a competition where the winner got to visit Harvey Weinstein's... goes to just the set to visit the cast. Right, not thank
no,
God.
my very first. Well, I'll just say it now. My very first note when I watched the movies, I said, "Yes, this movie starts as all testaments to young feminism do with the Weinstein Company logo."
Yes. Hey, at least the logo though, it does a little like blood thing, like it looks like fangs. You know, their little.
I know.
spotlight
Actually,
things.
it was kind of neat. I'll give him that.
Yeah. Wow, Trev, a defender of the Weinstein Company. Interesting.
Oh no,
okay.
no.
Cut that. Anyways, Trev and Jackie. Okay, when you're developing Vampire Academy, a movie about a bunch of young girls in high school and that are vampires as well, who do you hire? I don't know where you would go, but also they know where to go because they went to the Waters brothers, Mark Waters, who made Mean Girls, and Daniel Waters, who made Heathers. I a huge Mean Girls fan, obviously, and if you don't like Mean Girls, I think there's something wrong with you. But I have not seen Heathers.
That doesn't surprise me. It was made before 1993, so
Correct.
And
and
as
all
we all know,
movies
that's-
started with Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Jurassic Park was the first movie, as Kristen will tell you. As someone a little older, I love Heathers. And Heathers is still, always, I pointed to today as like one of the great, dark comedy teenage films of the 80s.
Right.
And yeah, it just, to me, that makes such sense, right? To me, that is like kind of a coup. I wasn't paying attention to this book series or this franchise, this IP enough at the time to have ever been like even known that was the case. But if I had been a Vampire Academy fan and I had been tracking the development of this movie and I heard them say, hey, we got the Mean Girls director and the Heathers writer to make this, this satire about young girls in an academy, I would have just been like, you know how eager I would have been for this movie? I would have been like, oh man, this is going to be one of the better movies of the year, right? Like that just seems like a home run.
Totally. Jackie, what were your thoughts hearing those names?
I mean, I hesitate just by Trev using the word satire, and I'm sure we'll go into that later. But in terms of adults handling teenage properties or really just understanding the teenage spirit and the bite, pun intended, of being a young girl, I couldn't trust two male professionals more than these two names.
Which is interesting because, like, Mean Girls to me is a Tina Fey production. She seems to be the reason why that works so well. But again, I don't know. Mark Waters. Mark Waters doesn't do anything for me.
No,
You know what
Mark
I mean?
Waters doesn't move the needle for me either. Let me be clear. Like I think I don't want to dismiss his directorial talents because I'm sure somebody could have directed Mean Girls worse. But I think you're right that the power of that movie is in the script and in the cast. But although he probably played a part in the casting too. For me, it was definitely more the Daniel Waters element where I would have been excited because, just Daniel Waters, as you mentioned earlier, because he wrote other stuff beyond Heathers. He wrote, he worked on The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which actually isn't that great, but, things like Batman Returns and Demolition Man. But he hadn't kind of gone back to the well and done another movie like Heathers. And I think signing him onto this maybe felt like this is his chance to get back to that world, right? And that's why when I say satire, that's what I mean is that my expectation would have been that this is maybe going to be a Heathers-like satire.
Right.
And I'm not a Gen Xer or 100 like Trev, but Heathers is an amazing film. And Winona Ryder, I definitely, growing up, wanted to be just like her. And the dialogue in that film and the movement and the sort of climax, all of the stuff about being a teenager, but like the best version of high school, where what if in every situation you said the exact funniest, most interesting thing possible. And there's just so much flow in that script, and it's such a great film because of it. Also, Christian Slater, what a babe.
Yeah, Jackie, the climax and flow of teenagers. Interesting. What a group of words. Okay.
I will say that Heathers, Heathers is one of those movies that actually nails the idea of like a heightened reality in a way that a lot of other films fumble. It's like it doesn't feel very realistic, but because it's just heightened enough, it feels entirely universal and feels like every high school experience. It just feels so real, even though it's so ridiculous.
There's a crass absurdity to it, just like there's a crass absurdity to being a teenager at all. So, yes,
totally.
I agree completely.
Because being a teenager is all about heightened emotions. And I think that's what Heathers and the best types of these movies hit on. In terms of the Waters brothers doing this, I did want to say, just to make this quick little joke, that the only way I could have been more excited is if this was John Waters' Vampire Academy. Now that's a movie I would definitely see.
Oh boy.
So I think it's about time that we just get to the movie proper.
When was the last time you ate?
We
you sure about this? Bon appetit. Thanks. Waterfront's for.
I should probably point out that my best friend Lyssa Dragomir is a royal member of an ancient race. And yeah, like most creatures with fangs, they live off blood. My name is Rose Hathaway, and I've been sworn to protect the royal bloodline with my life.
Look alive! Rose Hathaway is wild, dangerous.
Insubordinate.
Right here, folks. Right here.
I heard you were good at taking on two guys at once.
And this is Vampire Academy.
Please don't say Vampire Academy. You know how I feel about the V word.
It's good to see you.
Back off, blood whore. He's mine now.
God, I hate high school.
Lyssa is a possible successor to the throne.
Should know by now if us weird doesn't begin to cover it. Oh my god. I don't know what's gonna happen tonight. At this point, I can't remember who loves us and who hates us. Let's make tonight our bitch.
There's a bigger threat still out there.
Let's just keep our heads down and stay under the radar.
How's that under the radar plan working out, Highness?
Not so much.
Are you nuts? What are you thinking? Trust me, you do not want to have to get a nose job in Montana. The female, especially one who lives off of blood and magic, is going to have her mood swings. Everyone saw that I'd try to take the high road. Sort of.
Rose Hathaway is a Dhampir, half vampire, half human, training at St. Vladimir's Academy to be a guardian for her best friend, Princess Lyssa Dragomir, a good Moroi vampire, the last of her bloodline, and heir to the throne. The Moroi vampire breed coexists peacefully among humans, only taking blood from willing donors. They also possess the ability for elemental magic, water, earth, air, or fire. Guardians, like Rose, protect Moroi from evil vampires called Strigoi, who only drink blood to kill and are a threat to both Moroi and humanity. After more than a year AWOL from the Academy, Rose and Lyssa are found and brought back by Guardian Dmitry Belikov. With their return, Headmistress Korova intends to punish Rose for fleeing with the princess. But Viktor Dashkov, an ailing friend of Lyssa's tragically deceased family, dissuades Korova from her intent. Both girls go back to school like nothing ever happened. But something is happening, as Lyssa is unexpectedly threatened by someone wishing her harm. Who is this person or persons? Why do they want her dead?
Whoop-de-doo! What does it all mean, Basil?
Let the mystery begin.
Yes, that is at least some of the plot of Vampire Academy, as I'm sure we will discuss. But let's talk about how we felt about the film in general. And Jackie, as our guest and our resident Vampire Academy expert, why don't you go first? Tell us, you can talk about your initial thoughts on it, how you felt revisiting it today, but where are you just now in general about the film version of Vampire Academy?
Right. Well, I'd like to, as I answer this, set the scene a little. So it's 2014. I am 20 years old. And I am going to see Vampire Academy, the film that's about one of my favorite book series. And I'm very excited because this is a book series that's similar to Twilight, but is not Twilight. And I go to the theater. I think it's probably worth mentioning that I'm alone. Nobody came with me. And I'm so excited, and I'm so willing to put all of my life force and my emotional energy into liking this film. And I think it was the line that in the description of what the vampires are or aren't, we get, they don't sparkle either. And I went, oh no. Because this is a post-vampire suck world in which it's very aware that liking vampires is uncool. And it seems that this film very quickly is trying to sell itself while mocking itself. And I was very embarrassed to have stayed, even to the credits. But then I bought the DVD, so I have a lot to unpack.
I was going to say, not too embarrassed to buy the DVD, which then you let me borrow to watch for this.
I very confidently handed. I have a Van Helsing DVD too. That's another thing I have to unpack.
Beautiful. That's now we're best friends. But also, I love the. You bought the DVD, and also about a year ago, a peek behind the curtain, you actually messaged Trev saying, "Hey, if you ever do Vampire Academy, I would like to guest if you would have me." So here we are, about a year later. Vampire Academy on the brain.
I do love that I did that. I'm just so interested in the version of myself that was like, I need to speak my piece. I need to put this to rest. This part of my soul, this part of my life that was invested in a series like this.
Well, that's the thing. So, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
It just makes it seem more momentous than it was. But I guess everything was back when I was 20, reflecting back on being 14.
Right. So we know how you felt there. So it sounds like you were disappointed, but still you bought it. Now, flash forward to 2023. What are your feelings today?
So last week, Trevor and I actually watched this together. And when we do that, obviously we're in different cities. We throw in a movie at the same time, and we text throughout, which helps because I can focus on the movie and get my comments aside. And most of my comments to him were just poking fun at it, but most of my notes to myself were just lines. I just wrote down the lines verbatim, like I couldn't believe that they were said as dialogue, and I was trying to grapple with what the intention was, because like to say that I was disappointed in the film is a wild understatement, that it basically failed me as a lover of the books and also failed me as a lover of cinema. I was just very confused as to
Welcome
sort of
to our
like,
lives on this podcast, by the way.
Yes, and as somebody who is the target audience, I find often that I judge these films more harshly than Trevor is willing to. And I think that was an interesting twist where he was sort of urging me to like sort of pull back the hate train, and I was just willing to barrel in to self-loathing and the part of myself that loved this franchise. I wish I could access the version of myself that bought the DVD and what she was thinking. Like, I think it was just this optimism of like, maybe when I bought like Joseph Campbell's The Power of Myth, when I bought that book and I tried to read it for the first time, I was like a kid and I just didn't get it. And I was like, oh, this is very confusing. But later in life, I unpacked it and I read it and I was like, oh my God, the hero's journey. I understand all things about narratives because I have read this. And maybe I thought that like what I didn't like about Vampire Academy, I just couldn't access, that it was just too smart for me. And going back, I've never felt more insulted by a piece of media in my life.
Okay, well, that leads to Trev then. So because you watched it together, me and Trev never tell each other what we think of the movies beforehand. So Trev, I'm honestly, I'm undying to hear what you thought of this.
I mean, I thought it was crap. It's like it's a rough watch, right? Like I think there's like slight fun to be had at certain moments and with certain performances, but I kind of turned down this movie very quickly because in the first like 5 to 10 minutes, it's just all exposition dumps, right? Just exposition.
The first 10 minutes, Trev.
Well, the entire movie,
thing.
I know. The whole movie is all set up, but it's really bad at the beginning. And that's what I mean is just you kind of instantly know what you're getting into. You realize that, oh no, this is a movie that's filled with like my least favorite kind of dialogue. And that is when characters are constantly saying stuff to each other that they would already know, but they're doing it for the benefit of the audience. And that's like the laziest kind of writing, where they're walking like, well, isn't it time to go see your feeder? You know, the human that you feed on to get your blood. It's like, you wouldn't say that. It's like, it's just ridiculous. And it's just constantly doing that. And then, of course, there's also the voiceover.
Like I said, weird doesn't begin to cover it. My best friend Lissa Dragomir is a royal member of a magical ancient race, the Moroi. The Moroi don't wear black capes, turn into bats, or sleep in coffins. Daylight annoys yet doesn't kill them, and they don't sparkle either. But yes, like most creatures with fangs, the Moroi live off blood, but they don't live forever. That's why they need us. My name is Rose Hathaway, and like these other guys, I'm a Dhampir. We are the protectors, the guardians. Only half Moroi, I can eat a bacon cheeseburger or whatever else I want. Dhampir lives are dedicated to protecting the Moroi. We live by one simple expression: they come first. Only nothing's ever simple.
It's coming at you so fast and furious that it's not, the beginning is like too fast paced. It wouldn't slow down. So I already felt lost. And then really I never felt like I caught up with the movie. Mm-hmm. I think it's like an overly convoluted, confusing movie, which is interesting because I bet at its core level it's not. But because of the way it's presenting itself by just constantly trying to set up this world, I guess the way I would say it is, I want to say the problem with this movie is that it's a movie made only for fans of the books. It's not trying to let people not familiar with the source material in at all. But at the same time, then you hear Jackie say that even as a fan of the books, she didn't really enjoy it then or now. It didn't do very well. So it's failing on both sides of that, I think. Because it's only trying to be like, hey, here's the thing. Here, we're talking about that thing from the books, right? Here's the other thing from the books. So that's probably like the people who like the books are probably watching and being like, yeah, we know. Can't you like introduce that in a more natural way? And then if you're like us, Chris, well, although maybe you loved it, I don't know. But for people like us, I feel like we're watching it and it feels like it's less of a story and more of a Wikipedia entry movie where it's just constantly like, here's another thing that you need to know about this world. So that's like my basic problem with it. And then I have like another larger problem, which I'll talk about more as we get more into the review, about my real distaste with like the thematics of who the main character is in this movie and her relationship with the other main character. But yeah, so I didn't like it. I thought it was, to me, it symbolized a lot of what's wrong with these YA kind of movies.
Well, Trev, just take it from Rochelle Mead, the author of the books.
People have often asked me what surprised you most about the script, and what surprises me the most is how true it is to the book. I came in fully expecting, okay, we're going to slash and cut and change all kinds of things from the book to the script. And Daniel Waters just did an amazing job. He's got all the main parts of the book, all the main beats are there, all the parts from the characters we love. He's got all of those. He really gets it. He gets what I was trying to do with the balance of action and romance and humor, and he kept all those important things that we need to move the story along. And so I'm just completely thrilled with it, and I think fans are going to be too.
And Trev, if she loved it, then whatever to the critics and us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it stays really true to the story and to the characters. The only difference is kind of like there are more little like one-liner jokes, and that's pretty much the furthest thing that it strays from the book. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that Rochelle Mead, who's the author of Vampire Academy, loves it. That's like my only kind of defense when people are like, they changed this, she has this color hair, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, the author really dug it, so.
So, okay, it's my turn now. I am going to echo everything. This movie, you say it's an exposition dump, Trev. Within the first 3 minutes, we get the background of a car crash. We get the rules of shared memories and dreams and thoughts, the bond. We learn that they ran away from the academy over a year ago, that they're also vampires, and they're on the run from someone as well, and somebody's trying to chase them. That's 3 minutes. It's all tell. There's no show. This movie felt like homework to me. Mm-hmm. It is not accessible to newcomers. I had to pause this movie a couple times during to then rewind like 10, 20 seconds to get a grasp on what I was being told. Because, yeah, dude, this movie is on fucking overdrive. It's on overdrive. It's going way too quickly. You just can't sit with these characters. Scenes are they're just happening. Like, it just moves from scene to scene to scene. The editing is outrageously bad because, again, it's just exposition dumps. There's not even, like, establishing shots. It just kind of, like, moves from scene to scene. I would accept that if everything just wasn't so painfully uninteresting. Like, it's just, I get it. There's bad vampires and there's good vampires. And then there's guardians like Watchers and shit like that can protect them as they go forward. And that's fine. I get it. But everybody is so blasé. Like, Zoe Deutsch, who plays Rose Hathaway, daughter, by the way, of actress Leah Thompson and Howard Deutsch, the director of Pretty in Pink. First of all, she's very attractive. Let's get that out of the way. She's very attractive, and this movie seems to want to have the camera pointed straight at her cleavage for about the entire runtime. A bit distracting, but also she's really, they're trying that snappy, witty, MCU style, fucking jokey, you know, all over the place at the and it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't, you know, it felt natural in something like Mean Girls because everybody was doing that dialogue. Everybody was kind of snappy and witty and jokey, and it was like a heightened realism in Mean Girls. But in this movie, Rose is really the only one doing that. So when you go to conversations with, Lissa, played by Lucy Fry, or Dmitri, played by Danila Kozlovsky, it's just kind of, it doesn't work. So she comes off kind of obnoxious. Am I wrong by saying that?
Not only kind of obnoxious, but there's nothing about her character and the persona they give her here and the performance that Zoe Deutsch is doing that makes it feel like she would ever be a badass guardian.
Yeah.
Like that, I never bought that for a single second. She is like the comedic character, right? She's the best friend, which she is. But by putting the best friend into the lead role and saying the best friend is meant to be a tough warrior who protects you, it just doesn't work. And Chris, it's interesting because you mentioned how, it's just like answering like all these questions and it's throwing so much information at you. The crazy thing about the way this movie is set up, though, is that it is doing that, right? There's no doubt that from the beginning to end, it's just throwing so much stuff at you. And yet I still had so many questions by the end.
Yeah.
So this speaks to what you talked about being inaccessible. I just made a list of some of them. Even though the movie is constantly answering like rules and like throwing new information about this world at you, at the end, I still was wondering, how long do vampires live in this world? Why are they so easy to kill? How long do dampires live? Why do the Strigoi want to kill good vampires? Like, why don't they only go after humans? Why does not declaring a magic hurt? I had like all these questions still, and I'm guessing if I read the books, maybe I would know. But like you said, it's not bothering to tell me that stuff. It's a giant mess in that regard.
Yeah, you don't know the rules because if you had read the book. So I was like shocked by the fact that when you introed your objections to the film, you mentioned that it seemed to pander to the average reader of the books. As a reader of the books, I felt that the source material was not taken seriously at all. That by rushing through everything, that by just doing exposition dump after exposition dump and not showing any of the world except in like really tight clips of Dampier's training briefly outside or one or two magic classes, that the world itself was just not taken seriously at all because, like you said, there was no time devoted to fleshing these things out naturally, that it was so interested in being quippy, and it seemed to be trying to lure in those who would object to vampire films in the first place by like mocking itself and being so self-aware that it forgot to care about the story. Because I was thinking like you could easily do the same treatment with Harry Potter. I mean, like if you walked in and it was like, this is Harry. His family hates him, but he's actually a magician, but he doesn't know that yet. And there's these things called the Death Eaters, and they work for Voldemort, who tried to kill him once, and his parents are also dead, and that, like, bothers him. Anyway, here we are with Harry. Like, you can just, like, zip through the exposition and not naturally develop characters or show them in any real situations, like this film seemed to do. That just by blindingly zipping from point, weird Jimmy Carter poster, like going through the motions of pretending to be a movie while it's just mocking itself the whole time, you didn't get to be introduced to any character, and everything is sort of devolved into a punchline.
If Harry Potter was like Rose in this, there'd be like a line in the Harry Potter movies where he's like, Voldemort, we call him he who should not be named. Just like Jeffrey Epstein, or so, that's like that's basically what this movie keeps doing. And Jackie, I'm glad you brought that up because I definitely wanted to ask that because, again, I didn't read the books, but I know they say don't judge a book by the cover, but I'm going to for a second. Just from like the covers of the Vampire Academy books, and like just the fact that they felt like they were feeding off of the Twilight craze. I never would have made the assumption that they were as comedic and as goofy as this movie is aiming for. So that's true, right? This movie is obviously a more comedic version of the source material.
The flow is very nice. Yeah, and I find the comedy necessary because there's so much plot, and it's a book, it's a book to a movie. There's so much plot that it needs the kind of humor to ground it, and yeah.
Well, it's true in the books that Rose is a funny character. She has pizzazz, she's silly, she has this rich interior life, and that is sort of put up against the fact that she is aiming for a life of servitude, that her entire rich interior existence will be subservient to her friends, and that all of her needs come secondary. And that's really the central conflict of the books. As they navigate this magical world, it's the idea that this person, who we know is vivacious and interesting, will have to eventually take a back seat and not have the same future that she could have been destined for if she didn't have the right vampire blood. And this is a very bizarre segue into defending cleavage, because that's a big part of the book. Rose is built, dare I say stacked. And that is part of her confidence, that's part of her persona. And Zoe Deutsch, I thought, probably did the best she could with the script she had, but she did not look in any way like Rose was described in the books. And for me, that seems like a very bizarre thing to say, but she's described as being like much shorter and a lot tougher, a lot more muscle, a lot more girth. And I felt that besides a few maybe inches in height, and a lot of that was supplied by high heels, the difference in their physicality in the books was not shown on screen. And because they looked so similar, it is very hard, kind of like you mentioned, to put them in those categories that the film is asking you to place them. This one is a tough, badass guardian, and this person is the one that requires protection, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I understand what you're saying, like about the. And don't get me wrong, I'm a defender of cleavage. Okay, I don't want to put that out there. But I guess when I don't know the books, and I watch that two guys made this movie, and she's supposed to be like 17 years old in the book, or I'm sorry, in the movie, it just becomes a little odd, especially without the context. Because going back to what you said about it not playing well to the readers. I get what you're saying, but it does feel that you at least book reader understand the skeleton. You understand the skeleton of the book. You understand the skeleton of the plot and our main characters, right? But somebody like me and Trev coming, out of nowhere to watch this, it doesn't hold our hand at all. Like, of course, the meat of the movie isn't there, or of the books isn't there, but at least you're getting the checkpoints. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and also, the books aren't that meaty, but I feel that the film does a disservice even to that. Like, the fact that they return to this academy that they've been on the run from for a year, and they are vampires in a vampire world. Like, the line that we get is, damn, back to Vampire Academy. Like, who is that wink for? Like, it doesn't make sense in the context of the story. It doesn't make sense as a viewer. And that flippancy is just very bizarre, where, especially as a newcomer, I can only imagine what that seems to you, that it's sort of like the film is not taking this world seriously and is laughing.
By the way, speaking of that, let me take a moment and tell the highly successful Waters brothers how to do their job. Because not that as we're saying, I think it was probably a mistake and a disservice to the source material to make this movie as goofy as it is. So that's the odd thing about this film, right? This is where I admit that I would have been wrong in the past, because I said that if I had been a fan of this material in the past, I would have been excited about the Waters brothers doing it. But now, talking to Jackie and now watching the movie, I realized that they were clearly the wrong choice, because they're making fun of this material, right? They think it's below them. But even in that degree, right? So I think that's a bad choice, and I think that's what hurts the movie. But if you were going to do that, they missed an excellent opportunity for a great comedic edit, because the movie starts with like the logos, and then it says the title Vampire Academy, and then throws us into the film proper. And already you're like lost, right? Because at the beginning of this, it feels like you're joining like episode 5 of a TV show, and you missed the first 4. So it's like, I'm sure it's structured like that in the books, but in the books, when you're in the main character's head, you can spend more time and get more explanation. But here you're just thrown off. Anyways, a little bit later, they go back to the academy, and Rose calls it Vampire Academy. She's like, back to Vampire Academy. And Lissa goes, please don't call it Vampire Academy. I hate that term. That's when the title should have come up. She should have said that, and then it should have been, bam, Vampire Academy on the screen. Like, come on. Why do I need to think of this?
That's because this movie doesn't... It's not doing the satire and parody correctly anyways. Like, this is what you're getting at. Like I know we keep saying that it's supposed to be funny and taking the piss out of the genre, but it's also falling into every single trope that this genre has. It's trying to have its cake and eat it too, and it ultimately crumbles with both, right? Because it's never as funny or clever as it should be, taking the piss.
How do you say "what a dick" in Russian?
But then it fails on its own earnestness, because I just don't give a shit when the drama is actually happening. I don't care that Lissa is going to be the queen one day, because she's a wet blanket of a character.
Sensitivity-wise, exactly the same. Lissa is really, really sensitive, and I am ridiculously sensitive as well, so that's something that we have completely in common.
You know, like, is she, like, obviously she's not this way in the book, Jackie, but, like, how is Lissa portrayed in the book? I need to know. Because in the movie, I was like, who the fuck wants to follow this one?
In the book, Lissa is very sweet. She's very nice. She's very conscientious. When it opens, she just lost both of her parents and her brother, and they're still contending with that. And the relationship between her and Rose has been augmented by a recent car accident, obviously, but there's sort of like this mystical element that Rose is shadow kissed. And there's a very deep through line in the books about this. That's sort of part of the lore, what is interesting about their relationship. That something happened during the car accident, and afterwards they are bonded in a way that is bizarre and unknown in this universe. But the film is very weird about it because characters seem to know what it is before the protagonist does, and just it's not dealing with its own lore in the way that it could. But Lissa is very likable in the books. She's very fun and very serious, and she has more weight to her in terms of emotional depth. But again, she is not our protagonist. We see her through the protagonist's eyes, who is her best friend. So it's a lot more generous than this character that we're given on screen.
Interesting. Okay.
This movie has a protagonist problem. So I'm just going to finally get to this point because I think my real biggest hurdle with this movie was, you know, the key to these kind of stories is you really need the main character to be a great audience identifier. You want someone that the audience can feel like they're experiencing this world through their eyes. And that's why, that's why Harry Potter works, because it's Harry's going to Hogwarts for the first time. And so you get to experience all of it for the first time with him. That's why Star Wars works with Luke, because we're experiencing this conflict through someone who's being pulled into it and has never, been a part of it. That's why even Twilight works. It's because Bella didn't know vampires and werewolves existed. And we're learning as she learns it. It's really tough when you start your story with a character who's already lived in this world their whole life. So that's already like kind of an impasse that it takes real skill to deal with. You can do it, but this movie doesn't quite have the deft hand. And then the other problem is, I don't know, just thematically, and this is where I'm not sure. This is why it's good to have a fan of the series on, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it just felt really strange and bizarre to me that the main character is essentially a slave, like a slave or an indentured servant kind of to her best friend. Like her life's role is to be this guardian. Like, I know they're friends. I know they have this real bond, but ultimately it's a story about how her best life like possibility is to just always be in service and protect her best friend. And I thought that was a really kind of weird and almost gross relationship to be putting forward as like the positive friendship relationship in this movie. Like, people talk all the time about like the problematic relationships of these YA, books and adaptations, and I'm sure we'll talk about Rose and Dimitri. Don't worry, we'll get there. but even Rose and Lissa felt weird to me. I didn't like it.
I believe the discussion of the vampire caste system is definitely a bizarre thing to breach in the YA space. And I fully understand what you mean by that. The film does not touch on it at all. It's just kind of like, yeah, she's basically going to be her bodyguard, and it's considered a very positive thing. That is like the highest, like all guardians are essentially training to defend Moroi one day, and we could obviously delve into that, the complications of their half-breed vampires with human blood or something that is not quite vampiric and elite, protecting this royal race. And their bond in and of itself is a unique wrinkle in the universe, but it is still subject to this hierarchy. And even though the bond will possibly link them professionally in the future, in high school it's sort of used as sort of like, yes, Rose can see through Lissa's eyes and feel her feelings and experience her dreams. And that is hard I get the understanding of like what is there for a teenage girl to want to aspire towards or to be? Not that all literature you need to want to be the character. You know, I read A Clockwork Orange. I don't really want to be Alex. You know, I read Lolita. I don't really want to be Humbert. But
I read Jurassic Park and I wanted to be the Velociraptor. Just to let you know.
Sure. I wanted to be Rose because she's stacked, as I said. But it is like a weird dynamic to like make our Cypher character, as it were, a sassy girl who is sensing this impending, almost wanted to say social castration. That seems harsh. But just this lack of a future, because obviously in the books, not to spoil too much, but the Dimitri romance obviously becomes a hindrance. And I think he does actually say in the film that the complication of them being in a relationship together would be when the bullets start flying, as it were, who is he going to want to step in front of? The love of his life or the person he's been hired and retained to protect? And yeah, just like, that's like a weird thing to be like, come on, teens, don't you want that? Don't you want to die for your best friend? Like, very weird.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I thought was weird, because hearing you describe it, Jackie, it sounds like definitely, and not surprisingly, the books take more time to get into, you know, the actual ramifications of that, what it means to be giving up a normal life to be a guardian and the sacrifices that are made. The movie is not doing that any service. It's that would get in the way of making more jokes, it feels like. So it ends up just feeling icky because it's not really investigating it. And instead it makes it feel like it's telling the young viewers, no, there's nothing wrong with this relationship. It's totally fine.
Okay, well, I definitely wanted to take the opportunity to talk about sex, especially in relation to the vampire trope. So it seemed very much in this film, not so much in the books, that some of the male characters were there in service of showing that our characters have a case of the not gays. So Christian as a character is just as flat in the books as he is in the film. And it just seems that we're diverting attention to the relationship of Rose and Lissa. Obviously, blood sucking in this universe is very primal and satiating a desire, and the fact that Lissa feeds on Rose is very taboo in this world, and the film hovers over it but seems unwilling to explore it fully. So I'm interested in both of you, what you think about how the film conveys feeding and the relationship between the girls, because it seemed that just as it sort of was coming into focus about what it meant, they were like, oh, it's fine. We have some hot boys, too. Focus on the hot boys and don't think about what the bloodletting means.
I should say that Christian, that character, is Lissa's love interest in the movie and books. But yeah, it's an interesting concept that is just not brought to fruition whatsoever. So it ultimately becomes confusing. It ultimately, like, even just the way that there's a scene where Rose is going to hook up with one of the popular guys.
We Moroi may not burst into flames like Strigoi, but daylight still stings.
Poor thing.
Did you have jobs out in the world? What about an iPhone? What's the hashtag?
Please, stop talking. Whoa, Harsey. What do you think you're doing?
Come on, Rose. A bite when you're going at it is the best.
Oh, stop it!
Oh, I know that look. You've done it before.
I would never let a guy degrade me like that.
Not a guy, of course. Lissa. We've all been wondering how she fed.
It's like a really weird cut, too. It's just all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I want to go make out with this guy. After something that just happened that was kind of traumatic, which was very strange. But then obviously, all of a sudden she goes with the popular kid into a room and they start making out. There's no problem with a love scene, but it just was kind of out of nowhere. And it wasn't the whole idea that Rose was trying to save Lissa. And in this moment where Lissa needed Rose, Rose decided randomly to go basically have sex with this other guy. And they're about to bite into each other, and she's like, no, we're not there yet. So I understand the metaphor that it's getting there, obviously. But it just didn't jive with her character. I think, and also that the movie just played for jokes too much, right? So the metaphor and the strength of, oh, I'm letting a man or a woman bite into my neck and have this connection, it just kind of falls flat and becomes one of those plot points of another thing we got to explain later, which we never do. We just kind of put a pin in that for the next book or the next outing. Because it's very much swept under the rug in the movie, no? Like, everybody's like, oh, yeah, you can't bite into each other, but then it's just, like, dropped.
I mean, a lot of it is like that, and I totally agree with what Jackie's saying about, like, the not gays, because that definitely struck me watching it, too, and that's what I think was missing from this, and not that, you know, you want a movie written and directed by two dudes to necessarily be the movie to hit on this, just as you don't want a podcast hosted by two guys to maybe be the ones talking about this necessarily. But I do agree that, you know, look, like the best horror that exists out there, and this is horror adjacent at least, but the best kind of horror stories are ones that do work as metaphor somehow. And of course, a lot of vampire fiction has queer analogy and queer metaphor to it. And I definitely did feel like this source material, or this, you know, the basic structure of the story was kind of begging to be at least metaphor, if not more directly stated, about a queer relationship between Rose and Lissa. Like, that's definitely what felt like should be there. And then you got these guys just getting in the way of it. And honestly, if it was more about, you know, if the whole bond thing and the forbidden feeding was more a metaphor, kind of an on-the-nose metaphor about realizing you're gay and your first girlfriend and everything, I would forgive a lot of the problems I have about the complicated nature of the relationship, because it would make that relationship that much more interesting.
Yeah.
And that much more complicated and complex to really investigate. Like, oh my gosh, she's supposed to be your guardian, but now she's her lover. Like, that's like layers that this movie doesn't have the time to investigate. And that's proven by the fact that, like you said, it raises that. It gets into it, because obviously the feeding is always presented as sexual in almost all vampire media. So it does raise that idea. And then it goes, oh, but don't worry, they both have boyfriends. She likes Dimitri and she likes Christian. So there's nothing there. Don't worry about it. It's like, oh, well, it just feels like the movie playing it safe. And obviously, the books too, to a degree, that's probably a commercial decision. I get all these things are always trying to feed off of the thing that came before, like we said. So Twilight was, of course, a hetero, you know, love triangle. So this is going to aim for the same thing. But yeah, I was disappointed that there wasn't more of like a queer narrative here, or a queer metaphor at least.
Is there more queer narrative in the books, Jackie? Like, does it tackle that?
No.
No, really? Okay, wow.
I thought of a fun experiment. I thought I could describe what shadow kissed means, and then you guys could tell me if the film explained that to you at all.
It didn't. I'll answer right now, but go ahead.
Yeah.
So, in this universe, there are the 4 elemental magic types. So you've got fire, air, earth, and water. These are things that you can manipulate. So we see a few instances of this. Christian can manipulate fire. There's the person who tortures Lissa at the end who does air and essentially sucks the oxygen out of her lungs to torture her.
That's what he's doing. I thought he was like blowing in her face.
Yeah, I thought it was the old suck and blow technique. Am I wrong?
All right, I got called out for being too sexual. Okay. So shadow kissed the idea is Lissa's specialty, because she does not specialize in one of the key 4. Her magic type is spirit, which is essentially her own soul is the material that she works with. And what she can do is resurrect the dead and commune with the dead. So her compulsion abilities, which is in a lot of vampire lore, she can manipulate people's emotions even more strongly. But, and again, this ties in somewhat to the queer thing, is that it opens, the book opens like the movie opens, unfortunately, but it's obsessed with the inciting incident, which is the car accident. So
Right.
her whole family has died, her brother, who we learn is a bit of a philanderer, and her parents, and her best friend. And it was something about seeing her best friend dead that put her in such a catatonic state that it brought the spirit power to life. And she willed her own soul to heal Rose and essentially bring her back to life. And in the lore of the books, if you've been brought back to life, you are shadow kissed. So Rose can see ghosts, which comes into play later. And they have this link, this very specific bond where Rose can see Lissa's internal experiences. She can see out of her eyes. She sees her dreams, her memories, those types of things. She doesn't see external points of view. She doesn't see other characters watching Lissa. So, like when she flips her hair in the movie, there is no conceivable way that Rose could have seen it from that angle, but whatever. But that's what the shadow-kissed bond is. They cannot communicate through it. It is one way, which the film seems to play with. But that is what shadow-kissed means, because very few people specialize in spirit. The Mrs. Carp character, who's played by Claire Foy from The Crown, right? That's what she seems to be most known for right now. She is also a spirit user, and because the spirit is so hard to maintain, it typically drives the user insane, which is what we see with her character, kind of. But that's sort of what Lissa is dealing with, that the more she uses the magic without tempering it, it can get out of hand. So that's kind of her arc. If you saw that happen in the film, raise your hand.
I mean, they pay allusion to it, but I mean, I did wonder. First of all, let's shout out the amazing CGI in that car accident sequence. No, it's horrible. Just kidding. I wonder? You can answer this, Jackie. In the books, do they get into at all like the guilt of Lissa later realizing that she only saved her best friend and not her brother and her parents? Like that feels like that could be interesting, but again, the movie just doesn't really touch on that at all.
I mean, kind of, but it's not dwelled on too much. Another person, I can't say this because it's spoiling, but there's another character that we haven't even touched on at all, which is a shame, and he's great, but in the film, he's just kind of there.
Is this Mason?
It is! Mason is a huge character in the books, and he is an interesting... He's not quite a strong point of a triangle love-wise for Rose, because she calls him Ducky, paying homage to her father's film. I don't know if you got that reference. But no, the Mason character is actually amazing in the books. He's super fun and great and is just set up as like the perfect guy for her if she weren't dwelling on this older, Western-loving Russian man, who we should also talk about. He's very, like, angel-inspired.
Well, I actually called him the Russian Josh Hartnett at times.
Ooh.
But let's put a pin in that. Let's actually, talk about Dmitri. This is a good as we're talking about sex and relationships and, you know, maybe taboo themes within vampire fiction. But first of all, Mason, by the way, just comes off as the guy that she friend-zoned. That's his character in the movie. Played by Cameron Monaghan, the guy right now. He was, I guess, he's been in the Jedi Fallen Order games lately. That's
this guy played like the Joker in Gotham.
Yes, he did that too. But yes, Dmitri Belikov, the character played by Danila Kozlovsky. This is his first English-speaking role.
I thought we practice out here, away from there.
Dimitri, I know you must have heard some rumors.
All that high school demo stays back there, not here. This is life and death. The silver. Don't be afraid of it. Besides the sun, this stake is your only friend against the Strigoi. But you must subdue the monster and bring yourself to kill.
Yeah, killing Strigoi is what it's all about, right?
Most Strigoi were once Moroi. Some turned themselves Strigoi by killing during the feeding process, but many are turned by force. If you are going to thrust. My point is you might have known one personally as a friend. Can you kill someone you used to know?
You don't say.
Yeah.
But it does seem like he got his lines phonetically.
That's what I was about to say. I think it must be phonetic, right?
Yeah. And there's something, to give him credit though, there is something naturally charming about the guy. I mean, he's attractive, right? He's a big, like you said, angel-inspired, absolutely. So I buy that Rose is into him and vice versa, but I think that just comes down to both of you are super hot, you know? So this like forbidden love thing that's in a lot of vampire lore, which is a gigantic thing in Twilight. Here, it's weird because this is like a teacher-student romance as well. there's that angle, and that didn't sit great with me. It sat fine with Rochelle Mead, though.
The idea for Rose and Dimitri's romance was one that was kicking around in my head for a while. It's difficult being a former teacher to be writing about a student and a teacher who have a romance together, because we were always taught that that is a very wrong thing, and certainly it absolutely can be, you know, in that situation. So I'm certainly not encouraging that in people. The age difference isn't that great between them. Mainly, you know, what the romance's big point is to just, it's about love that has to challenge society's ideas. That's what they're facing. And that's what it comes down to. You know, she's almost an adult, but she's not quite there, and her feelings are strong, but everyone says that doesn't matter, and how do you deal with that? And that's what kind of forms the central heart of the conflict.
Yes, the teacher-student dynamic was odd, to say the least. There's something about a forbidden romance, even an age difference, but again, they're vampires, so we're already playing with age and how that works. But then to kind of put this almost, I don't want to say parental figure, but somebody that is there for guidance, it comes off icky, no?
Well, yeah, because even the age thing does, because he even calls out the age difference. Like, he makes the comparisons where he talks about, you know, the age difference between them, and says, like, well, it'd be different if you were 20 and I was 28, you know? Right. But he's drawing allusion to the fact that she is 17. And so, yeah, that relationship was bothering me the whole movie. And I get, you know, look, as growing up in the 80s, certainly 80s sex comedies and even into like 90s sex comedies, there were, of course, you know, there's always been movies that will play with, you know, teenagers and adults. But it's when you're watching a YA movie that you realize is pitched at young girls as the target audience, to have the central romance be a girl who's crushing, you know, a 17-year-old girl, a minor, crushing after her older teacher, and him reciprocating those feelings, it again feels very, very weird and gross. And I didn't like it.
Yeah,
and I get
didn't
like,
sit well.
and again, this might just be a matter of how it's handled, because we brought up Buffy earlier, and you know, and the Buffy and Angel is definitely like, you know, a corollary here. I'm sure Rochelle Mead was very familiar with that. And I don't know, like that relationship feels like less bothersome to me, probably because that show took the time to investigate and examine how that is a problematic relationship. And this movie doesn't do that. Again, it's, you know, it's a quick movie. It's an hour and 45 minutes. It doesn't have the time to necessarily. So it has him at the end say, well, we can't be together because, you know, it'd be tough for me in my job. But it ends with like enough of a wink where it's telling you these two are going to fuck eventually. Let's face it. You know, so I don't know. It's just another thing that just felt bizarre to me about the film.
Are you telling me that neither of you have ever had a crush on a teacher?
Everybody has a crush on a teacher. The teacher having the crush back on the student, I think, becomes the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And the movie seeming to promote it as like, that's fine because it's romantic.
Yeah, that's fully. I accept that.
And also because sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that there's another thing where it's sort of like, do we get his age?
In his examples, it's always like he's saying like it's like an 8-year age difference. So I'm guessing if she's 17, you know, I think they're playing it that he's 8 years older than her, but he's saying, well, it wouldn't matter. He's doing that thing that you hear people do a lot, right? Where they say like those age differences mean less as you get older.
Can I say what the problem is? Is that this is high school. And I think if this took place on a college campus, it'd be a little different. You know, age them up a bit. Take them on a college campus, because now, yes, we both are adults. So yes, there's still that divide when it comes to instructor versus student, which is still, you know, again, taboo and not right and yada yada, right? But there's an extra level of what when it's a high school. These people are these are kids. Like, even so much so that there's a point where the movie gets like extremely horny, and it's when they talk about Mia, who's kind of like this Moroi girl that is kind of is Rose and Lissa's enemy at high school, kind of like one of the catty girls. Let's just say, like, they're trying to invoke that they don't get along. All of a sudden, there's like this reveal that the blood on the wall in their living quarters is because Mia. This is the quote with two other guys. Mia let us have sex with her if we obeyed. And we got blood splash all over your place when we all fucked her. Wait, what? Like, they didn't say fuck, but when we all had sex with her. And it was just like, I'm not trying to sex is sex. Like, do what you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody, whatever. But it's strange to still primarily focus this in high school.
Yeah, I think that's also where the fact that this is a visual medium gets confusing, because in the books, Rose is 17, but Zoe Deutsch is my age. I think I'm like a month older than her. So when this film came out, she was 20 years old.
Right.
So 20 is not far from 17, but we're
that's the thing. I mean,
line.
She looks more 20 in this than 17, and that just makes you wonder, to like Chris's point, even beyond making it a college, why not just change the script and say she's 18?
Yeah.
I know it's only a year difference, but at least then you're getting into, like, for us, and I understand, again, we keep saying this, the caveat is I understand it's a fantasy about vampires, and that's obviously a different social structure and everything, but the problem is your audience who is watching it has an understanding of how 18 is legal, and like in most of society, most of your target audience is going to be like 17-year-old, and that guy, like, that's weird. And then the fact that he's her teacher and an authority figure, as Chris is saying, just makes it, it just complicates it even more. I don't know, it's just the kind of thing where I get it. It's nothing new to this genre. These discussions have been had about Edward and Bella too, because essentially that's even worse, right? That's Bella dating like a 200-year-old man or something. And like I said, Angel, however old he is in Buffy. So this is nothing new. But I guess it's because the movie is so flippant about everything, and because it doesn't take the time to raise any of those complications or problems in a really deep way. It's the kind of thing where every time there's a scene between those two that should be like romantic or sexy, I bet you most of the audience, like me, is instead thinking about that. Like that's in the back of your head.
No, Trev, that's a great point. I mean, again, it's who your target audience is, right? And like we've said, the target audience are, 13-year-old girls, which is the age Jackie was when, these books came out and she was reading them. So, it's one thing to tell young girls that you should die for your best friend and protect them forever and try to kind of give up all your hopes and dreams for their aspirations. But then now you compound, hey, also, if your teacher gives you the eyes, it's totally cool if you guys bone.
As long as he's hot and has a Russian accent.
Right. That can barely get through it.
Yeah, I think that was like very reflective of my high school experience. And I was also very accustomed to an aging man who just kind of hung around the high school and was constantly in conversations with me and my principal about disciplinary action. So I think we should talk about the victor in the room.
Great segue.
It's funny because, Chris, you mentioned in your plot synopsis a while ago, you were setting up the mystery of this movie, and you were like, well, who is it? Who is coming after her? And it's funny that you even posed that as a question, because I think anybody who watches this movie who has seen a movie before will instantly guess who the bad guy is. The moment Victor walked on screen, I said, there's the bad guy. Primarily because it's the biggest actor in the movie, right? It's Gabriel Byrne, and you realize, I wonder why Gabriel Byrne wants to just play this like sick old man that's just a friend of the family. No, he doesn't. You're not getting Gabriel Byrne to come in for that part. So it's pretty obvious from that to me. It was like I was like, yeah, usually when there's a big actor in one of these, they turn out to be the bad guy. But then it gets just even more obvious as it goes along, because it's so bizarre that they even treat it like a mystery, because they reveal that, like, well, Lisa has this power where she can bring people that are almost dead back and give them health. And then they're like, by the way, this guy just happens to have this like terminal illness. Like, I wonder if that has anything to do with anything. It's just so obvious. I guarantee you Gabriel Byrne did, like, what do you think, Chris, 3 days on this movie? Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just in a few scenes, but every scene he's in is so telegraphed, to the point that I think like his second or third scene, they actually have him turn to Rose and go, I'm on your side, Rose. And you're like, oh no, he actually verbalized it. It's like, he's not now.
I think I'm looking up the text message you sent me. I think it was 10 minutes into the movie you said, the sick guy is actually a bad guy. And I was like, offended. I was like, what makes you think he's bad? And you said, because I've seen other movies and read books, and I'm not an idiot. Mm-hmm. And then he said, this is like watching an elementary school play.
And the villain, we haven't even mentioned his daughter, there's also a third character, like a third lead maybe, but as Trev said, none of them are leads, so who knows. But Sarah Hyland plays Natalie in this film, is kind of like the nerdy one that gets involved with this plot, but she has she has a familial relationship with Victor. Is Natalie in these books too? Like, is this all text? Like the turn and this and that, like, is this all text, or are we taking liberties here?
It's text, but Natalie is definitely in it more in the movie.
Yeah.
And because she serves no function in the plot, just to be like, reminder, there's this girl, and she's in the movie, and something's gonna happen, that by the twist by the end in the film, I was just like, oh my god, I've seen so much of her. Obviously, she had to come into play at some point.
Yeah, but can I just...
Go ahead.
I just want to call out Sarah Hyland because I want to give her credit, because I think, to go back to talking about Gabriel Byrne. So when I realized Gabriel Byrne was the villain, I was waiting for the moment where he finally will turn, and I was like, oh, we're going to get a really good over-the-top Gabriel Byrne performance. Because that's usually what you get when like one of these really big respected actors comes in and does a movie like this. You think of Michael Sheen in Twilight and just hamming it up to no end. And Gabriel Byrne never does that. That's what was disappointing about his turn, is he's just as boring after he's revealed as a villain as he is before. And I'll at least give Sarah Hyland credit in that when she later turns into a Strigoi and becomes like a bloodthirsty killer, she is like actually giving a very fun performance. Like It's one of the few times where the movie kind of comes to life and somebody seems to finally get on the wavelength of, oh yeah, this should be like a really fun, over-the-top movie, right? So actually, that's like one of the only highlights of the movie to me was her 5 minutes of screen time as a Strigoi.
Well, she had the opportunity to take off her glasses, and then she's a different type of character now, right? Yeah, like again, this movie is like trying to take the piss, but it's not doing it well. Like it's still hitting on all the tropes, all of the, like, it's trying to take the piss even out of the like a high school movie as well, but it's not even doing that well. Like it's barely commentating on the vampire genre. But then even in its handle of the high school genre, it's failing. This movie is really, honestly, it's just a mess. I felt very, very confused by so much of it. And again, it's a brisk runtime. Trev just said it's an hour 45 minutes long, which usually I'm fucking all for. I love a small runtime. But something like this movie, and from this discussion with Jackie, it needs another half hour. Do I want to watch that other half hour? No. But it's in need of a half hour. Because this movie is bullet points. It's bullet points of plot.
Because there's so much plot, and it's a book, it's a book to a movie. There's so much plot.
It's bullet points of ideas, bullet points of themes. And it's on maximum overdrive that it's just, you're almost weirdly exhausted by such a short film. I felt like when it was over, I was like, fucking finally. Like I can take a break, because my brain kept going and trying to be like, okay, wait, what's this rule there, this rule there? Well, wait about that. They're breaking my rules here. They're not getting back. Oh, they've commentated on, okay, they're coming back and they're fixing it for me. But it just felt a complete disorienting experience for something that does seem not as complicated on the text. You know what I mean? Like it does, because again, 13-year-old Jackie jumped in head first and loved it. So it's not like you got to be a fucking scientist to get it. This did appeal to young teenage girls.
I mean, like in the books, people talk about what's happening, but not in the way that they do here, where characters in the book don't walk into the cafeteria and say, now for the obligatory cafeteria scene. Like, totally. That was so weirdly flippant. And I mean, like, that's some of the Mean Girls energy, but in a bad way, where we're not anthropologists dissecting this world. We're supposed to be in it. Mm-hmm. And the characters, like you've mentioned, saying things that are completely unnatural and don't make any sense for them. And, like, if we could talk about the climax, just sort of like the big scene where Lissa's been kidnapped by Victor and he's holding her hostage, essentially understanding that if her powers are used on him efficiently, she'll probably die, and he doesn't care about that. And, like, just so many weird choices. The gunfight which is bizarre because guns do not impact them in the way they seem to in this film. But Rose even saying to her when she's so weakened by the experience, drink my blood, she says, power up, princess. And it's just, again, so bizarre and flippant. And it just, the emotional gravitas, the impact of that scene in the book just dissipates. And the more that Trevor judged me through the viewing, the more I kept having to say, none of this dialogue is real. None of this is in the books at all.
Which is funny because a line like that, power up princess, works in something like Buffy. You know, like I can picture one of our characters saying that and getting away with it. But for whatever reason, is it because this movie's so wrapped up in its mythology? Is that the reason why? Is it because I don't know who the hell these characters are?
No, I think you alluded to this. I think you alluded to this earlier in that in the world of Buffy, every character kind of talks in this heightened, like the Buffy seems to exist in a heightened world where that's the standard style of speech, and in this one only one character is doing that. There's like this tonal whiplash and this tonal inconsistency. I think ultimately what this really boils down to is that, the Vampire Academy books, it sounds like were created at a time right when Twilight was hitting. So they were like clearly, I don't want to be as cynical to say Rochelle Mead only wrote these to like cash in on Twilight, but I'm sure from a publisher perspective, it was very much we have the next Twilight. And the books got to enjoy coming out at the same time that the Twilight mania in the literature world was at its height. Mm-hmm. This movie, as we just pointed out, comes out after all of the Twilight movies are already done, and I think there's already been a clear backlash against that source material. Jackie said this earlier, this movie seems embarrassed to be what it is. And it almost feels like this is definitely a matter of picking the wrong people to make a movie of the source material.
You talked about the comedy. Let's talk about that a little bit more because it is actually a really funny movie, and the team behind it, they definitely know comedy.
That was Mark Waters. Mark Waters, the director, has such a talent for comedic timing. Like when he would give me line readings, I was never offended. I'd go, okay, I trust your opinion. I'd do whatever he says. And Dan Waters has such a mind of a 13-year-old girl, which is upsetting considering he's a middle-aged man. But together they were like the dream team in this kind of teen comedy. I guess you could call it a comedy. I don't know. It's hard because it's not one genre, which I love.
But you can understand why they picked them. I think Mark Waters and Daniel Waters were picked because they wanted to make a movie that was going to poke fun at Twilight-type movies while being one. Yeah. And ultimately, the disconnect here is that when they make those Twilight references, when she says, "Oh, well, these vampires don't sparkle," that's speaking to like Chris and I. That's who that's trying to like get, right? This is like, oh, it's cool. If you're one of those people who hates Twilight, we get it. We get Twilight's dumb, and we're making fun of it too. The problem is, Chris and I were never going to go see this movie, so you shouldn't be playing to us. You're playing to the wrong audience. And you're only, annoying and pissing off your actual target audience. Yeah. So I don't. This is just a totally confused movie. It sounds like from what Jackie said, sounds like a butchering the thematics of the source material, embarrassed to be a vampire movie, trying to be a satire when it shouldn't be. It's just a big old mess.
Here.
Two things can I say two things I did? Two things I did like.
Two whole things. Well, a little like
soupçon of things, but I kind of did like the little blood cafeteria. How it was kind of like part bar, part spa. I don't know. I thought that was kind of. I like the visual of it, and I loved when the most obvious ADR happened to replace fucking with friggin'. Remember when they go, now that's some friggin' fire magic? And she's clearly saying fucking.
I will say, and this is another thing that was alluded to earlier, it was very strange to watch this movie and have the Jimmy Carter poster come up at a time where we just learned that Jimmy Carter has unfortunately gone into hospice care. I always want to be like, hey, too soon, Vampire Academy.
Hey, first of all, you know my Matrix, you know my simulation theory, and I texted you the moment I watched that because that evening we got that news. So I apologize, America, one of your heroes. My bad.
Probably the most decent human being to ever be president.
Yes. So I guess, I mean, Jackie, do you have a final word on the film before I want to poke you a bit about the TV show? if you have any knowledge of that. But about the film in general, your final thoughts, I want you to have the final word on the film.
Thank you. And also an aside, I do have a question for the both of you, but it's sort of like at the conclusion of our discussion of the film.
Sure, great.
My final thoughts on the film are, I could not articulate it better than Trevor has. Just the failed expectations of me as a lover of the books, the failed expectations of me as a lover of cinema. This film just seemed to disappoint on both fronts, that it was embarrassed to be what it was and just zipped through the plot points that I actually thought were interesting, because there was some interesting vampire lore to be explored here, regressive as it may seem to an outsider. The idea of these different classes of vampire and the roles of protection. I feel like that there is a fascinating idea where even if you have these classy, demure vampires, there's a version of vampires that are just, oh, and then we have the Romanian, bloodthirsty, crazy one. And that's what the Strigoi essentially are, is that they're just, and then the vampires, who are like the real baddies. But you get that in Buffy with like Spike and certain other vampire characters who are allowed to be as quippy but also flawed as the rest of the characters and have real arcs. There's something that Vampire Academy did add to the canon, even if it's not that significant or not even that distinct, even within its own genre. But I think the film was just not exciting for me as a fan, and I don't even think I left that theater thinking that they would ever make another.
And too bad you didn't have friends at the time, so that you had to go alone.
Hey!
Wow.
That hurt a little because it was kind of accurate.
Also, shame, because like many movies we've looked at on this podcast, sometimes the best you can hope for is, especially if it's based on a series you like, you can go like, well, I hope the first movie is at least standalone enough that, well, they never got to make the rest of the sequels, but that feels like a piece unto itself. But oh no, this movie ends with like a hardcore sequel setup. Oh yeah, that will go nowhere. Yeah.
So there was not an adaptation of the second novel, Frostbite. Prager Entertainment announced on MTV that they found investors for the sequel, but didn't really have any money. So they actually launched a fundraising campaign on Indiegogo to help fund this production cost. Suffice to say, the goal was not reached. And did you contribute?
I did not, because I didn't have a smartphone until 2015, but also I wouldn't have after seeing this film.
Yeah. How strange is that, though, an Indiegogo campaign for your sequel?
And that's also like doubly embarrassing, and really tells you something about the reaction to this movie and how it came too late in the cycle, I think, and it just was like the wrong movie, because the YA fan base in general tends to be one of the most rabid, right? And the fact that they couldn't raise because they weren't even trying to raise the entire amount. Wasn't it that they were just trying to see if they could get to like 1 million? Wasn't that what like the studio was like, if you can get like 1 million, we'll go ahead and finance you.
Yeah.
And it like failed miserably. I mean, this movie didn't even come out in theaters in some countries. Like after it, bombed so bad in America, I think it came out straight to video in the UK. So the fan base just couldn't come out for it in any regard, whether it was the original movie or the sequel.
So that doesn't stop this franchise from becoming something else. In 2021, Peacock gave a series order to the reboot TV series. It was canceled after 1 season. Now, Jackie, did you tune in for that?
I did not tune in for it as it came out, but I did watch part of the pilot today. I did the work that I had time for, and as I was watching it, I found that my eyes sort of glazed over as quickly as they did with the film.
Interesting.
I will say, like, my girlfriend and I watched the trailer for the TV show, and I definitely noticed that
it's even less work than I did.
Well, it looked like it definitely looked like it had a better production value than the movie. I was definitely struck by the fact that it very much had that modern thing of, let's make sure not as many of these characters are white as they were in the movie, right? They definitely did like a lot of like race swapping of the characters, which is fine, but I'm sure there was probably some idiot fans out there who were very, very mad about that. But I did want to bring up one interesting fact about that show, and that is, of course, that, Chris, you're going to love this. I noticed that in the TV show version, Christian Ozera, the love interest of Lissa, the fire-controlling vampire whose parents were Strigoi, was played by Andre Day Kim, who, of course, we all know as Chief Kyle on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So there you go, baby. There's your Vampire Academy Star Trek connection. You thought I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I did it. Thank you, Peacock.
Well, this is our final episode.
Peacock is such a weird network to have chosen this, because if you have done the work that I have, which is watching the first 15 minutes of the pilot, it seems very much like it's trying to be like the original film was trying to be Twilight / mockumentary / knockoff Mean Girls. The Vampire Academy show is sort of like Euphoria plus vampires. We dropped the F-bomb very quickly. I think the opening scene is fabricated. It's not in the books, but it's a bit of a better situational scene where we are introduced to Lissa's whole family. There's this party for the queen, so we meet the queen. There's a Buffy connection. J. August Richards plays Victor, so Charles Gunn from Angel is in the show. But the thing is that there were very weird choices about who knew what at the time. So the fact that the Mia character, who seems sort of our straw man antagonist in the film, she is found out to have been having a sort of secret relationship with Lissa's brother, which is probably fueling some of her animosity. That is just known in the first opening instances by all the characters. They all know that Mia is sort of Andre's cast-off, and the car accident scene we see naturally, and they're all... The difference is that they're not in a car on a road, they're in a limo. They're all in the back of a limo drinking out of champagne glasses. So it's a lot more luxe and luscious. There's a lot more intensity and vibrancy, and a lot more swearing and drug use than I would expect from the book.
You asked a question, why Peacock? Well, that service has been struggling since the day it started. So I think, honestly, scrambling to get some YA property that has the vaguest name recognition that's available. Because, that's what I would think. But doesn't seem like it's for that service.
I also saw...
Well, obviously it didn't work again, so...
Yeah, that's true.
I thought it was telling, too, that I typed in vampire into the search bar, and Vampire Diaries popped up before Vampire Academy, which is a Peacock original. So you would think algorithmically they would try to promote their own show that they put their own money into, but they were like, no, you're probably looking for Vampire Diaries, but just in case you click on the wrong button, here's the show we made.
That we only get one season for that probably ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I mean, already I could see what they were trying to do, but still, as a fan of the books, I was thinking, just read the book. Just don't try to make this into a visual medium. It just doesn't translate as well.
Well, and that's why I think, at the end of these types of, at the end of our episodes, me and Trev usually say, like, what do we want from this property? Where could it go? What could happen? Well, this is already tried TV. And usually that's our answer to the YA genre. Hey, go to TV. You have room to grow. You can dive into these characters fully realized. But I think you're right by saying this doesn't translate well because, first of all, Rose is a narrator. And basically the entire world is seen through her eyes, but such a firm POV that, we don't hear her thoughts. We don't hear her inner monologue whatsoever. Unless you do it, terribly in this movie where you try to put some dumb narration every once in a while, but it's all quippy. So I think, from my perspective, Vampire Academy is, do I want to use the word unfilmable? I don't want to make it seem like, it's Lord of the Rings. When that happened, everybody's like, oh, that's an unfilmable book. But is Vampire Academy not long for the visual medium?
I think so. I think the fact that the movie failed and now the TV show's failed, I think you're not going to see anyone attempt an adaptation for a very long time, and that's probably for the best. Not everything needs to be adapted. I think it's just, this isn't really a trend anymore. That's the surprising thing about them even trying to do the TV show just like a couple of years ago, is that I feel like even in the YA literary world, it's not really vampires that are the hot thing anymore. So it kind of instantly feels dated. And when I hear Jackie say that the show seemed to be like sexier and more drug use, maybe a little of that was them saying, well, the Vampire Academy fans have probably grown up. They're probably a little older now. So let's try and like make a show that will pull them back in through the IP and like their nostalgic memories of liking that, but we'll make it more adult and grown up. But really the problem with this, and again, I don't want to be cynical because I believe Jackie in that for its target audience, I'm sure that these books are better than the movie. But I will say that to me, on just a general level, there's nothing in Vampire Academy, the source material even, that's original enough to kind of justify trying to make a film or TV show out of this at this point. We've seen all this before, and we've seen it all done better. Like I said, it's Twilight, it's Harry Potter. This is always going to come across in movie or TV form as it's going to feel like a cheap imitation.
I completely agree. I think that, again, it's not a standout enough in the genre to make an adaptation that can speak to whatever time it's reaching into. What the books accomplish was more than enough to justify their own existence, but the adaptation, the why this, why now, will always fail because there aren't enough idiosyncrasies to the text that make it interesting or approachable for anybody who isn't already bought in.
Yeah, I can't say it better than you have. So that's... This has been a great conversation. I want to say before we wrap up officially and say what's next on our programming and do our sign-offs, Jackie, thank you very, very, very much for doing this. This was awesome. This was a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to it. I know I don't want to speak for Trev, but I think we both were really excited to do this. And even for you to take the time, and I wanted to respect your time, but to help look at the research and take 2 hours and plus out of your day now and watch the movie again and go through the torture. Thank you for being here. This was a lot of fun. I thought you brought such a great perspective and such a personal perspective to this IP, and it was great. It was great.
Thank you. I mean, it was an honor to be invited. I love your podcast. I've listened to every single episode, and it was a thrill to throw my hat in the ring and give my 2 cents defending this universe, but also, I think, correctly chiding it for what it does wrong and what it does not appeal to as a female. Copyright, patent pending. I did want to ask you, too, both a question. So this has been a month of vampires for you. You have talked about vampires before in the past. Trevor, I know as your friend that vampires are your favorite monster, correct?
Zombies are my favorite, but I think there's probably more good vampire stories.
All right, in the undead realm. So in terms of vampires, I wanted to ask you both, if you were a vampire in a fictional world, whose vision of vampires, what world would you choose to live in? From Anne Rice to Bram Stoker, what's the vampire
Bram
world?
Stoker.
God, this sexually charged episode had me mispronouncing it. Bram Stoker. Where would you like to be a vampire?
I mean, that's a tough one. I really like a modern vampire tale. If I was to personally live in one, just because, I like being in modern times. I really like, we just talked about Underworld and how much we love that franchise. I don't want to sound recency bias, but Underworld is fucking cool. And I feel like if I was like a death dealer and like a trained assassin, and I didn't really have to worry about the humans for most of it. It was just more or less like this kind of Lycan thing going on, like Lycan v Vampire War going on. But you kind of have a purpose as well, but it's also romantic and sexy and fucking cool and action-packed and fun. I think I'd make a fucking awesome death dealer. Yeah, you know what? That's the answer. That's the answer. I want to be a death dealer. That'd be sick.
I was going to be a perv and say I'll just be in From Dusk Till Dawn so I can hang out with Salma Hayek's vampire.
Just her leg, though, and her foot, right, Trev?
But instead, I'll be a different kind of perv and say, honestly, if I'm just going to try and be like in a really like cool, sexy vampire world, I don't think it would be any better than being in Tony Scott's The Hunger. I mean, just get Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie as your vampire pals. Just a sexy '80s world. And look, that brings it full circle because in that movie, Bauhaus actually appears and performs Bela Lugosi's Dead, and we get a really crappy cover of that by Churches in the end credits of Vampire Academy. So yeah, I would probably love to live in the world of The Hunger, or just Buffy because it seems fun. The world, not the. I wouldn't have to make the show with that asshole, but live in the world of Buffy. Sure.
But also the vampires have the bumpy foreheads and
you're ugly.
Short lives.
Yeah, but they seem to maintain a lot of their general personality, which I think that's a concern. That's why I don't want to be in 30 Days a Night or whatever, because they seem to become more like feral beasts. So anything that allows me to just be me but be a vampire.
That's fair. Jackie, what about you? Same question.
I think because I'm an indie asshole, I kind of want to be in The Only Lovers Left Alive because they're so cool. It's like Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton? How do you say her name?
You got it.
Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton and, God, who's Loki?
Tom Hiddleston.
Tom Hiddleston. Make it look so cool and dreamy and fun, but it's a little lonely. So I'd want to cut that with a little bit of True Blood. Because it's fun and interesting. And I think the Anne Rice vampires, they don't get boners. Because her theory is that the blood's not flowing, so they can't consummate in that way. And I feel like that's a little less fun of a universe to be in.
A lot different than me when I watch the Anne Rice movies. You know what I'm saying, guys?
Is that staying in?
Wait. Yes, it is. But I also I just realized. I missed the most obvious answer. I said The Hunger, but what am I talking about? I would definitely just want to live with the housemates in What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show.
Oh, obviously.
Yeah. I thought you'd be in Let the Right One In, and we just put you in a box for a couple years and fucking let you out when we want.
Let the Right One In, aka the relationship that's only slightly more problematic than Rose and Dimitri.
Yeah, only slightly, I guess. Yeah, sure. So that'll do it for our episode of Vampire Academy. I hope you enjoyed this. Our guest was awesome. This was a lot of fun. Next month, that's it. That's it for Will You Be My VAMPentine, Trev. We're moving into another multi-month theme.
Gotta love it. This is one I've been asking for from the beginning.
Yes. So you know how Tarantino has Pulp Fiction? Well, Failure to Franchise has Pulp Frustration. And we're looking at Dick Tracy from 1990, The Rocketeer from 1991, The Shadow from 1994, and capping off with The Phantom from 1996. All 4 films I have never seen.
Amazing.
Amazing. So this is going to be a wild ride. Very excited for it. Jackie, before I give my send-off, do you have anything to plug? Where you are on the internet? Do your thing.
Sure. If you are interested in a very slow-moving social media presence, you can find me on Twitter at JCCHarniga, at JCCharniga, and nowhere else. Leave me alone.
Excellent. As a man that's not on any socials, I feel you. But follow our podcast on all the socials at F2F Pod. That's at F2, the number 2F Pod. That's, like I said, on all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Also, please, rate, review, whatever you do. Throw us a star rating. That'd be sick. And just join the tribe, hit that subscribe, and follow along with us amongst our pulp frustration. Actually, where do you want to go from there? Do you want to jump?
I think we should mention the Waters Brothers because I think that's interesting that they brought them in.
Right, correct. Yeah, of course. Okay, let me just go.
I love The Heathers. The Heathers is such a good movie.
Yeah,
you like it so much you call it The Heathers, even though it's called Heathers.
Oh my God!
There it is. Welcome to the pod, Jackie. Welcome to the pod.